OpenAI Codex packs a 400K token context window, double what Claude Skills gives you on any plan, which means whole repo refactors you'd have to split across sessions and Claude Skills just run straight through in Codex. Both tools are getting serious attention right now, so I'm putting OpenAI Codex up against Claude Skills across 5 head-to-head tests to see who actually wins. But Claude Skills wins the benchmark quality test, and that one result could flip your whole decision. So stick around for the conditional verdict at the end. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. And every number in this video is traced back to official pricing pages, model cards, and community benchmark reports. If you're shipping code daily and paying $20 to $200 a month for an AI agent, picking the wrong one costs you real time and real money. Test 1. Cost. The number I kept seeing from developers is $100 a month for a mid-tier coding agent plan, and a lot of people assume one tool is going to be way cheaper than the other, which can send you down the wrong subscription path fast. So let's actually look at what both OpenAI Codex and Claude Skills charge at every tier. What I found across all 3 tiers is pretty interesting. Entry level, OpenAI Codex is $20 a month. Claude Skills is $18. Mid-tier, both hit $100. High tier, both land at $200. And the only structural difference is that Codex is bundled with ChatGPT, while Claude Skills requires a separate Pro plan to unlock it. The $2 entry gap is so small, it doesn't move the needle for most people. And the real difference is structural. If you're already paying for ChatGPT, Codex comes along for the ride. But if you're not in the Anthropic ecosystem yet, Claude Skills needs its own plan, so your existing subscriptions matter more here than the sticker price. Cost is a tie. I went in expecting at least one tool to have a clear price edge at some tier, but the pricing structures mirror each other almost exactly. So neither side takes this one, and the scoreboard stays level at 0, wins each, 1 tied. Test 2. Coding benchmark performance. A solo dev pushing a big refactor on a Friday afternoon needs their agent to actually solve the problem, not just generate plausible-looking code that breaks at runtime. And SWE-bench verified is the closest thing we've got to a real-world repo-level stress test. So the gap between these 2 tools on that benchmark is the number that matters most for daily coding work. What surprised me here is how clear the gap is. Claude's Sonnet 4 model scores 72.7% on SWE-bench verified, and OpenAI Codex's Codex 1 comes in at 69.1%, which is a 3.6-point spread, though the 72.7% figure is for the underlying Sonnet 4 model rather than the Claude Skills product itself, so take it as directional, and human evil data only exists for the original Codex 12b, which isn't a current model, so I couldn't find a fair comparison there. Claude Skills takes this one because the model running underneath it scores higher on the best repo level benchmark we've got, and the call was closer than I thought it'd be given Codex's other strengths. But 72.7% versus 69.1% is a real gap and not noise, which puts the board at Claude Skills 1, OpenAI Codex 0, 1 tied. Test 3. Speed. Over 1,000 tokens per second is the number Codex Spark posted on Cerebras hardware. And if you're running long agentic loops where the model has to think through dozens of steps, that throughput figure is the difference between a task finishing in 2 minutes and finishing in 20. Looking at published figures, it's pretty one-sided. OpenAI Codex has 2 real numbers. GPT 5.3 Codex reported as 25% faster serving for Codex users, and Codex Spark clocking over 1,000 tokens per second on Cerebras. While for Claude Skills, I couldn't find a single published speed figure anywhere, and you can only score what's on the board. OpenAI Codex wins speed, purely because it's the only one with published numbers, and Claude doesn't have anything on record to compare against. So Codex takes it on evidence, and that ties the overall score at OpenAI Codex 1 win. Claude Skills 1 win, 1 tied. Alright, so we're tied up, and the next 2 tests are the ones that could actually flip your decision. Context and output limits is coming up, and that's where a tool either handles your full codebase in one shot, or forces you to break it into chunks. And if you've ever lost work because your agent ran out of context mid-refactor, you know exactly why this one matters. Test 4. Context and output limits. The day your coding agent hits its context ceiling in the middle of a 50-file refactor. You lose all the accumulated state, you restart, and you burn time re-explaining what you already told it. And the gap between these two tools on this dimension is not subtle. What I found here is a clean 2-to-1 ratio. OpenAI Codex gives you 400K tokens of context in-app, while Claude Skills tops out at 200K on every plan. And Codex also publishes a 128K max output limit that's useful if you're generating long files. Though for Claude Skills, I couldn't find a comparable output figure anywhere, so the context advantage alone is the headline. OpenAI Codex takes context and output limits, and it's not close. 400,000 tokens versus 200,000 is a 2x advantage on the thing that breaks whole repo work, and that moves the overall tally to OpenAI Codex 2 wins, Claude Skills 1 win, 1 tied, so Codex is ahead going into the final test. Test 5, Deployment and Modality. A lot of developers assume both tools run in roughly the same environments, but the execution model is actually pretty different. One runs in a cloud sandbox with the network off by default. The other runs locally in your terminal with full file system access, and where your code actually runs changes your security posture and your workflow. So this one is worth looking at carefully. Both tools have broad reach, but in different ways. OpenAI Codex runs across web, VS Code, CLI, iOS, and Amazon Bedrock all inside a cloud sandbox, while Claude Skills runs across web, iOS, Android, desktop, and Claude Code in your local terminal. And Claude also has an open standard at agentskills.io that's community reported as adopted by ChatGPT, Cursor, Copilot, and Gemini CLI, which is a pretty wide footprint. Okay, so the open standard adoption claim for Claude Skills is community reported, not vendor verified, so treat it as directional, and the cloud versus local difference is really a use case call. If you need network isolation and reproducibility, Codex's sandbox is the better fit. But if you want your agent touching real files on your machine without a cloud round trip, Claude Code's local execution is the one you want. Deployment is a tie. I thought Claude's open standard would pull it ahead, but the reach is genuinely comparable when you look at the full platform lists, so neither tool wins this one outright, and the final scoreboard lands at OpenAI Codex 2 wins, Claude Skills 1 win, 2 tied. OpenAI Codex wins on 3 concrete things. Context, with 400K tokens in-app versus 200K, so whole repo refactors fit in one shot. Speed, with 25% faster serving and over 1,000 tokens per second on Codex Spark with published figures to back it. And output, with a published 128K token output limit that Claude Skills simply doesn't match with any number I could find. Claude Skills wins on 3 things too. Benchmark quality at 72.7% on SWE Bench verified versus Codex's 69.1%, which matters for complex repo-level work. An open standard at agentskills.io that's community reported as adopted across ChatGPT, Cursor, Copilot, and more so, your skills travel. And local execution, since Claude Code runs directly in your terminal with full file system access and no cloud sandbox in the way. So here's the decision rule. If you need raw context and speed, go Codex, because 400K tokens versus 200K is the number that decides it for big codebase work. But if you care more about benchmark quality and an open ecosystem that travels across tools, Claude Skills is the safer pick. And while Codex wins the overall tally 2-to-1, the right answer really does depend on your actual workflow. If you want to see how a free local option stacks up against one of these, I ran that exact test in Alma versus Claude Code, and the results are pretty interesting, especially if you're trying to cut that $20 to $200 monthly bill down to 0.